Hi friends! Today I woke up motivated and I decided to record a video. It's an event, just don't get used to it. Jokes aside, what do we do today? Today I will show you my method to recreate the colors that I see and that I don't own as tubes or pens. Can't possibly own everything. I mean, for now. The process is very easy and now you're going to learn exactly how. First, let's choose some colors. I picked these three, which I thought were gradually more complex to make. So from an easy warm yellow to a more complex mauve, lavender, how you want to call it. Let's start with the first one. A basic concept to have when creating a color is the one of tint, or hue. First thing to do when you look at a new color is to understand its source. Tint is another synonym for color, by the way, and this is going to be easier or not depending by the color in question. Normally you want to look for the primaries, so red, blue and yellow. And if you're brave enough, you can also add more adjectives like purple, magenta or whatever helps you to get the job done. At the end of the day, it's not important what term you use, but the meaning that it has for you. So the concept of color temperature is also something that guides me into the recreation of a color. The nuances of color are mostly infinite, and I noticed that setting the temperature helps me lots in finding also the right elements to mix to obtain the color I want. Here we can see this one is a rather warm yellow, so we have already spot our source, yellow. Plus, I noticed that it has some warmness in it. If you're having a hard time understanding what's cool and what's warm, try to take the extremes as examples. For instance, we know that lemon yellow is a rather cool yellow, so how is it compared to this one? We can see that there's a clear shift in temperature. Now take cadmium yellow. How is it compared to it? Now I notice that the color we have is warmer than cadmium yellow, but not that much. So what is left is understand how to warm it up. To warm a yellow up, you have to choose a warm red. Very easy. So for this example, I've recreated the color using cadmium yellow and cadmium red until I reached a certain point in which I was satisfied. And the first one is done. Yay! Next level is pine green. That's the name that was on the website, or a color similar to hooker's green, maybe. On a side note, what does hooker even mean, and why a hooker should be green? I only know it thanks to Lady Gaga government hooker, the term I mean. Back to the exercise. Here we introduce the concept of value and intensity. Don't get scared, it's very easy. Respectively, how dark or light a color is and how saturated, so how vivid a color appears. In watercolor, you avoid white for the sake of world peace, and instead, if you want a paler color, you just add water. Simple as it is. The second one is a bit tricky, my friend, but don't worry. Intensity. Normally, on the color picker chart, what you do digitally is drag the color down towards black. But in watercolor, again, for the sake of word peace, it's better to play with complementary colors instead, because the mixture you have will appear more alive. Quick recap for beginners. Complementary colors are colors opposite on the color wheel that mix together dull each other, pushing the mixture towards a dull gray or black. The couples are yellow and violet, red and green, blue and orange. Said so, I had a little bit of trouble perceiving this color. At first I thought that it was a cooler than it actually is, and here's my attempt. So what you see is me trying to add as much phthalo blue as possible just to then in the end add the previous mixture of the first color that we created together. So I added also permanent rose to dull it a bit because I didn't perceive it as very bright, very vivid, okay? So we're talking about intensity. So yeah, and this is what I created. I'm still not sure I completely matched it, but it looks very similar. For the third color, we have every notion we need. So color source is definitely a purple magenta that, although a little bit dulled, I perceive warm, like a worm. No, not a worm, like warmer. Sometimes it's hard to identify the color, and so we just need to try and see how it goes. This is not the first time that I tried to recreate this color. It gave me a hard time because at first I thought that it was cooler and duller. But then when mixing it, and especially when waiting for it to dry, that's very important. Always like swatch it and blow dry it. That's what I did. I noticed that it was in fact warmer and not so dull. Huh? Anyway, to dull it, I simply chose a complementary color. And the mixture I did with violet, I always use these three primaries, so permanent rose, phthalo blue, and transparent yellow. That's the main set that I use. So when I don't mention it, it's probably these colors. So I also added, as I said, transparent yellow because violet and yellow are opposite. And but we're not here yet, so it needs phthalo blue, and so I kept on mixing and mixing and mixing. And then at the end, I also added a bit of alizarin crimson to the mix to obtain it more reddish kind of shade because permanent rose is very cool red, and so I wanted to warm it up a little bit. So at this point, I have a very what seems like a dark mixtures, and it doesn't quite resonate with me. So what I did is dilute it with water, and then I swatched it, and I noticed, damn, I'm very close. It's not perfect, but it's an honest job, and I'm very satisfied. And here's the simple little guide to recreate the colors you see in 3 or 4 easy steps. So ask yourself these questions. 1. What's the color source? And from that, you start. Green, okay, mix a green. 2. Is it warm or is it cool? So choose colors that have these properties. For example, if you want to create a cool green, you don't want to use cadmium yellow, which is a rather warm yellow, but choose something like transparent yellow instead and phthalo blue. 3. How dirty or dull a color is. If dirty, add a complementary color to the mix. 4. How light or dark it is. Sometimes it's a matter of water, so just add to it and see how the color looks. Understand that if you look at colors on a screen, they're going to appear fuller. And that's because watercolor is a transparent medium, so you will never achieve that fullness unless you use gouache or a more opaque or even white. This is it. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving me a like and a comment telling me if you found it useful. If you're going to recreate this exercise, also let me know and how it went. And if you want to keep in touch and are interested about learning watercolor, the subscribe button is just below for you to press. Lastly, and then I'm done, I will leave, I have a Patreon in which I post extra content, sometimes also for free members. So if you're interested to stay in touch with me, I'll leave you the link in my bio. Alright, bye!